Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Young Lawyer Podcast. For all of those newbies listening in, this podcast aims to bring the legal community together by highlighting the available support for young lawyers, discussing different journeys people take, and other important factors that could affect your legal journey. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the Young Lawyer Podcast.
Well, welcome to the Young Lawyer Podcast. It's fantastic to have you on. If you can just start by introducing yourself and how you began your legal journey.
My name's Matt Hollings. I'm the head of business development at Sky Discovery, and I began my legal journey as a clerk at a Townsville law firm called Bolton, Cleary and Kern, before finishing my degree and packing the bags and moving to Brisbane to take up a law graduate role.
And prior to obviously getting that experience as a law clerk, did you have any interest in the law? Like, did you touch on it in high school, or just kind of fell into the job? And
I did legal studies in high school, and I really enjoyed it. I came to realise quite quickly after starting a law degree that legal studies is absolutely nothing like a law degree. And then obviously when starting a legal job, that practicing as a lawyer has nothing to do with a law degree either. But look, I was always interested in the law for reasons that I think probably escaped me as a kid. It just seemed like it would be a fun job to have. And I always pictured it as a qualification that probably had a wide, utility. Like you could do so many different things with it. There's a commercial element to it. There's the litigation element to it. It just seemed like something that suited me at the time. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to be. So I figured a law degree would give me the widest possible chance of figuring out what that was.
yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that's a pretty common thing. Most of the time we have no idea what we want to do straight out of high school. We're just kind of winging it. And yeah, I've heard it a few times now that, I've just done a law degree because it does give you options. And even if you don't go on to practice, there's so many other things you do. You can do, I know a few people that, work the insurance or work with the banks just doing contracts advisory.
And look, that's the thing. And I think the application's actually a lot wider than I thought it was when I joined. And I think law school and the clerking that you do, at least when I did it, and this was probably back in 2009, 2010, kind of narrows the focus a bit. Back then there was, you get a law degree, you join a law firm as a graduate or a paralegal, and you work your way up through the ranks, and you make partner. So there was a pretty simple, straight arrow line as to what your career path will be. But I think over the years, and as my position now sort of reveals, that there are a multitude of ways in which you can use a qualification in law to maybe forge a career path that's a little less simple.
And do you want to dive in for the listeners at home about your career path, and I guess how it's not as straightforward as, the usual, I'll get a law degree, go straight into a law firm kind of thing and work your way up?
Yeah, look, I started as I was fortunate enough to get a summer clerkship with a national mid-tier law firm in Brisbane back when they perhaps weren't as coveted and as competitive as they are now, and spent my 4 weeks doing some work, and again was lucky enough to be offered a graduate role. So moved from Townsville. I was studying at James Cook University and got my law degree through JCU up there, and moved down to Brisbane to join the firm. And to be honest, I spent the better part of 3.5 years with that firm, and the work was good, and my colleagues were great, but I didn't love it. The hours were long. I just didn't have that burning passion that I thought would sustain me to put in the next 10 to 15 years that would be required to achieve that definition of success that I'd become so accustomed with. The idea was that, and everyone wanted the same thing. They wanted to work hard, be promoted, get a pay rise, become partner. And I sort of looked around and just couldn't see myself putting in those hard yards. I'd like to consider myself to be a hard worker, but I'm not about sort of punishing myself in the quest to achieve something if it's not really what I want. And that was a really hard thing to grapple with. I remember at the time where I was considering moving and I was looking at other law firms, and I actually came across a job advert for basically a legal process outsourcing company as a business development manager. And their main clients were litigators. So I went through the application process and got my first interview, and naturally you get a bit excited about that prospect of a second interview. You start talking to some of your colleagues about it, and the look of incredulity on their faces, like what the hell are you doing? Like, you're not going to another law firm? Like, you're going to go into sales? Are you mad? It was just this bewilderment that they had. So that there was zero support around. And of course, I didn't really have any role models that you could sort of point to and be like, oh, but look, such and such did this, and they left their law degree and went and joined a BD team that provides services to legal firms, and they've been successful. Like, I kind of looked around and felt like a bit of a pioneer. I wasn't. There's been people obviously that have done it, but you just couldn't see that from where I was standing at that point in time. So it took a bit of umming and ahhing, and my old man and my parents have always been a big support of me in my career, and they were like, look, there's no point in you hanging around plugging away doing something you don't really like, let alone love. Why don't you just give it a go? So I made the jump, and I haven't turned back. It was 6 years ago now that I left the law as a practicing solicitor. And in that time, I've, been challenged in so many different ways. I've had a tremendous amount of opportunity to grow and develop, as a person professionally. And I'm very thankful that I made that decision. And I think that it's pretty fantastic to see what's available out in the market. I think a lot of people perhaps have a very strict definition, much the same that I did, around what it means to be a lawyer. But I can guarantee you that now more than ever, there's boundless opportunity to do something different.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on a heap of things there, so I'd just like to go bit by bit. You speak about when you first get into a mid-tier law firm, it was pretty prevalent back then, but probably not as much now, putting in, 12 plus hours. And to me, coming up in today's day and age where it seems that, younger and younger people are actually just going, what, I'm not going to put in that to get into a top tier firm. I'm just going to start my own. It's always bewildered me, that concept, because, there's only so much mental energy each day that a person can actually push into their work before it's actually just, destroys them in the work. The quality of the work goes downhill rapidly.
It is. And that's not necessarily, it's a culture that's probably inadvertently fostered sometimes. Like, I don't really recall too many people going, you need to stay until 8, but no one was telling me to go home at 6 either. So it's sort of this silence that creates this expectation in a lot of ways that to progress, you've got to be better. And, I was part of an intake of 12 graduate lawyers. So there's an element of competition that comes with that. And really at the time, the only way they measured that success was by virtue of your billable hour performance. And thankfully things are changing, but there still are some of those legacy elements that exist in some pockets of the legal profession.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a guy I did me PLT with last year, he works at, one of the bigger firms in Brisbane. And he said, obviously, it's all based on billable hours. So he was working, I think he said, till probably 12 o'clock, some nights. And I was just like, it comes to a stage where you go, you've given your all. Yeah, it's cool to get a nice little bonus at the end, but, how am I going to get affected? Like, how am I going to be affected by this decision?
And it's tough. There are so many factors that play into an inability to control your day. I think as a lawyer, and in particular as a litigator, where I come from, that, you can be as coordinated and as prepared as possible, but you've got peers, partners, opposing parties, the court, legislative timelines. There are so many other factors outside of what you can control that have the ability to impact your work product and how busy your day is going to be. So you can set yourself up for success and find yourself getting to 5 p.m. with, another 4 hours of work to do. And there's a big cultural component of that, a big shift that still needs to happen as much improvement as we've seen over the years, and recognition that, some of these expectations are unsustainable. There are all of those other factors that need to be addressed in the context of improving, the working lives of lawyers, and in particular junior lawyers.
Absolutely. And when you touch on, your transition from law to sales, I guess, what was your mindset at that stage? Because obviously, you must have had decent, I'd say, confidence in yourself to actually go, well, I'm not going to listen to what everyone else is saying. Like, I feel like this is the opportunity for me and I'm going to do it because it sounds different to me and I don't have a passion for what I've been doing.
Look, one of the big things that reaffirm, I grew up something wasn't foreign to me. Selling a computer when you're working at Harvey Norman and you're 16 versus selling a service to a law firm working on a very complex and valuable litigious matter have similar core elements, but are slightly different in the way that you do it. I honestly didn't really know what I was walking into in that sense. But what did give me the reassurance to make the jump was that in my second interview, they were talking about some of the stuff and the technology that they were working on. And with my junior lawyer hat on, I was like, are you kidding? Like, I wish I knew about half of this stuff. Like, had I known about it, then, some of that would have improved my working life immensely. And I sort of felt buoyed by the fact that I can wear that lawyer hat and have the conversations that weren't being had with me as a junior lawyer. And that sort of became my push. I mean, if only I knew. And how many other lawyers out there would be in the same boat where they're just like, oh, if only I knew that existed, I'd go and use it. So I felt quite comfortable with the fact that I knew my audience and the pains that they have to endure, and that the business really had something valuable to offer. So on that basis, I'm like, I think I can make a fist of this, and just decided to jump in.
Yeah, no, that's always the best way. Sometimes you just have to back yourself. And I guess just out of curiosity, like, is it as a lawyer role? Like, do you still have the practicing certificate, or is it just, you?
So I maintain my practicing certificate. I have ever since I left the law firm life. Okay. I don't practice as a solicitor, but I keep that practicing certificate because much the same as the reasons, I felt like I should join that business at the time and become a business development manager. It was fundamentally grounded in the fact that I understood the practice and the practicalities of it. So I always said to myself that I'd, want to keep it so that I can continue to remain connected to those challenges as they evolve and as they change. Because I think the key to good business development is understanding your customer and your client and knowing their pain points. So I've always kept it, and I, maintain my CPDs every year. I present. Last year, thanks to COVID, presented countless webinars on the benefits of something like e-discovery, and I will keep it. I think some small part of me also keeps it because maybe one day I might go back to practice. But I'll primarily keep it because I want to remain connected and continue to understand the customers that I look after and make sure that we're on top of all the things that they need.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair enough. That was more, I think, of just a personal curiosity. And so what emphasis would you place on, I guess, having a passion for what you do? Because obviously you're pretty passionate about this whole e-discovery stuff compared to, being a litigator.
Yeah. Look, I think having a passion for something steels you against the days that are perhaps a bit shit. And there are plenty. I've just joined a fantastic company. They do some excellent work. But the days are long and they're jam-packed, and, you come home pretty exhausted. and elements of it are more fun than others, and there are some that are just simply not fun at all. But if you're passionate about it, you acknowledge that there are, a gentleman I used to work with used to say there's easy and fun and hard and necessary components to every job. You can't have one and not the other. So I think if you're passionate about what you do and you understand the value that it brings, whether it's getting an outcome for a client in a legal matter, or helping a team run a dispute more efficiently, then it really can help you sort of ride out the peaks and troughs associated with any sort of working environment.
Absolutely. And in that regard, what kind of setbacks have you faced along this new journey, I guess, outside being a lawyer? And I guess kind of what was your mindset in dealing with it and moving forward?
Imposter syndrome is a pretty big one. So, I used to work in practices that were quite hierarchical, as are most legal practices. And you have this healthy respect and fear for senior partners or senior practitioners. And here I was, 4 years PAE, now sitting in rooms with partners, asking us to talk about how we're going to, run this big piece of construction litigation for them. Or you're asking them for time in their day to talk about how we can maybe help them do it better. And it affected me quite considerably. Just like, shit, like you can't just go and speak to a partner like that or send that email. Like there was a process you followed as a junior lawyer. And that sort of wasn't how you accessed it. But, in those moments, you kind of have to have a bit of a talk with yourself and go, look, what we're offering is valuable and it's helpful and there's some merit in it. And if the person doesn't see that, then that's okay. That's not a reflection on you. That's maybe a reflection on how busy they are, or the fact that, maybe they've already got it covered. So it's about sort of just pumping up your own tires a little bit and sort of pushing forward on that. The other thing that was a setback, or maybe more so a challenge, was going from an environment where billable hours were a reflection on your work product. So you get to the end of the day and you'd have 6 billable hours to show. There'll be days that I work where, I haven't recorded a billable hour for the better part of 6 years, and you'll work your butt off and you've got absolutely nothing to show for it. You could work your butt off for a client for the better part of 12 months and still have nothing to show for it. So that idea around not having billable hours cuts both ways. It's great to be outcome driven, but sometimes the outcomes don't come, or sometimes you lose. Like you'll be working on a deal and you get beaten out or the matter settles. And so that 12 months worth of work is really, it's not down the toilet, but it's not come to any sort of tangible outcome, which took a bit of grappling with in the early parts. Still does.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm pretty similar with the imposter syndrome. Jumping, like as you said, when you go into practice coming from law school, you go, all right, I've studied, I've spent how many years studying, like I should know everything or know most parts of it. And then you come into practice and you go, shit, what do I do? Like, I haven't dealt with this in law school. How do I fix this? How do I fix that? And you get to a stage where, whether you've made a mistake or you don't know something, you go, am I really cut out to be in this position? Like I'm not as good as I thought I was. And I think it's a bit of a reality kick as well.
It is. And I don't think it ever goes away. I still have to have those conversations with myself. And I think that, I think it's healthy to, have that sort of balance. You should never let it consume you. But I think that the moment that goes away, then perhaps there's other things that need to be worked on. Like you don't want to walk in to a room thinking you're the smartest person there, because you're never the smartest person there. In fact, you want to be in a room full of smarter people, because there's a lot of things that can be learned from being present in those conversations and absorbing them. So you just need to find that Goldilocks sort of balance, which is tough to do, but that's the right place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I completely agree. You should always be trying to find, well, if you're the smartest, as I've read it on, most places, if you're the smartest in the room, you're in the wrong room, obviously.
Exactly. And, I'm lucky enough that in the roles that I've held, and in particular at Sky Discovery, like there are so many incredibly intelligent technologists and lawyers, that far outstrip me in terms of what they can do with the systems at our disposal. Like some of the things that they design, like it would take me years to even remotely learn how to technically do that, let alone practically implement it. But that's not my job. Everyone has a role to play. That's lawyers are realistically experts in their own right on a certain subset of things, and you can't be all things to all people. And I think some of the best lawyers I've met are those that sort of have a very specialty expertise, but can also realize and acknowledge when they need to reach out to others for support and other experts. And that's a very, very powerful skill, to admit that you don't know everything and that someone knows more. But when you can do that, when you can have that sort of humility to leverage other people's expert opinions, then I think you really become an unstoppable force.
Yeah, and I can completely agree. That's great advice and pretty much summing everything up. And I guess as we come towards the end of this interview now, I've just got a few final quick shot questions, I guess. If you went to law, or if you didn't follow down the path of law and into the sales, what do you reckon you would have ended up doing?
I always wanted to be a pilot. I like the idea of flying planes. Not that I've been on one for some time at the moment. I got to go on my first flight in about 18 months at the start of March, which was a novel experience. But I always like the idea of flying a plane. Someone told me the other day they're pretty much a glorified bus driver these days, thanks to technology. But that would probably be my next stop.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I've always thought about that. You just spend hours up in the air, just getting to look over everything.
Effectively, I had a mate who was in the Air Force, and apparently they're just trained for emergencies. So, like, a good flight means you do basically nothing. If you're doing something, then something's going wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Next question is, what is something that you know now that you kind of wish you knew back when you started?
Oh, that's a great question. It's probably really dawned on me in the last little while, particularly starting a new job, is that building a network is so valuable, even just for your own professional support, not to win work, but just to have people around you who know who you are and know what you're about. I've been really humbled by the support I've been given in the last 5 weeks since joining Sky, about the amount of people who have come out, wanting to be a part, wanting to help me out, wanting to provide some introductions, and also, the power that our network gives you in helping others. Like there's been many a time over the last few years where, I've had the privilege of meeting a lot of lawyers where someone's like, I'm just not happy here and I want to go there. And, I've been lucky enough to meet someone and can facilitate that introduction. So, try and meet as many people as you can, stay in touch with them if you can, celebrate their successes, because ultimately they're the people who are going to come out and support you when you need it most.
Yeah, absolutely. And you never know when it will pay off. Like you said, you might have a connection that can help another connection, or even, your story, in fact, of taking the leap into a completely different field. And hopefully people who are listening or watching this will realize that, it's not a straight track. Once you get a law degree, there's, a plethora of options out there for you.
There is. And, you said before, we were talking prior to the podcast about knowing what you want to do. I still don't. Like, I'm loving what I'm doing now. Do I know where I want to be in 5 years? No. And I've actually given up making plans like that. The world's changing so quickly that, I might want to be something that doesn't exist yet. So ultimately, I just intend to throw myself into whatever I'm doing and learn as much as I can. And if you do that, opportunities tend to present themselves. If you're a good person and you have a lot of integrity and you work hard, good things gravitate towards you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess apart from networking, what would be your summary of your advice on people who want to take up a legal career or, young lawyers?
look, it doesn't need to look like it does in the movies or by virtue of what you've been told. And it's okay to get into the profession and not enjoy where you're at. I probably took quite an aggressive route in terms of not being entirely happy with where I was and going a hard step left into a parallel career, but to a fundamentally different career. There are so many new ways of doing law, practicing law, that it doesn't need to be that traditional pathway. And if anything, there are a lot of very senior practitioners, experienced practitioners who are, ballooning out of national mid-tiers or top-tier law firms, starting their own boutique practices and doing some really exceptional work. And I think my biggest piece of advice is it's not about where you work, but more so who you work for. If you have a good direct line manager that can become a mentor of sorts, they're the ones that dictate the sort of work you get exposed to, the responsibilities you'll get, and the growth that you'll see. So if you like a lawyer or a person who is a lawyer, then that sort of good working relationship is going to be more valuable than, say, trying to scrape your way into a top tier and perhaps not having that rapport or having them giving you the same opportunities.
Yeah, that's such great advice. And thanks again for jumping on. If people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way to do that?
They're more than welcome to hit me up. I'm on LinkedIn and my work and email and mobile are there. As I said to you before the podcast today, I'm always very keen to talk to junior lawyers about career pathways that look a little bit different to the norm. I always wish that I had someone like me to talk to be like, hey, is it okay if I throw in the towel on a mid-tier graduate legal career and go and do something a bit silly? And my answer to that would be yes. But if you want a little more detail, then jump head first into something like what I did, then I'm more than happy to give my time and talk through the process and the opportunities available. Like it's pretty amazing what's being done in the legal tech space at the moment, and there are so many companies that are going to need good, talented lawyers to communicate the value of those services to the general legal market. So opportunities abound.
Yeah, wonderful. And well, thanks again for jumping on and giving up your time. There's been a whole heap of things you've touched on and provided some great advice. And I guess me as well, I've found it very valuable. So thank you for that.
Mate, thanks for having me, and thanks, for setting up an initiative like this. It's incredibly useful and obviously takes up a bit of your time. So thanks for getting it started.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to the Young Lawyer Podcast. If you found this content useful or enjoyable, make sure you share it with your family, friends, or colleagues. Let's grow the Young Lawyer community. If I can ask you a huge favour, can you please leave a review or a comment on iTunes and subscribe to the YouTube channel, so that way we can grow the community even further. Until next time, guys.